Those of you who like the Holly Weird stories, I have a good one for you, I have a long one for you, I have a wild one for you. This came from someone named Jay, and she said that she was having a several-year relationship on and off with an actor who essentially used her as an offering to a deity in order to possess some of the qualities that he admired about her. Okay, in case you're wondering, why would this girl share their story with you? I have a series, if you're new here, called Spooky Scary Storytime, which is the series of allegedly true, listener-submitted stories about the creepiest and most unsettling things that they've ever experienced. So that's how Jay came into my life, and she actually told me this story over a 2-hour phone call, which I really enjoyed, and I feel like there were a few stories in there, but I'll get to those eventually. This story is the one that she initially emailed me about, and she was like, can you call me, because I don't feel like typing this all out. So I'm going to be telling you the story in a conversational manner rather than like looking at an email like I usually do. So I'm recalling these details from memory. Now time for my disclaimer: this story is alleged. I'm not using any real names, and I can't prove anything. This is just what was told to me. Okay, so Jay says that she is in the entertainment industry a little bit, and in 2015 she went to a movie premiere with her friend. Her friend had invited her, and they were not involved with this movie at all, but her friend just had an in somehow. So they go to the premiere, she's sitting in the crowd, the premiere wraps up, and this actor who's in the movie comes walking up the aisle, and he makes eyes with Jay. It was kind of that, hey, you're cute, you think I'm cute type thing, and they ended up talking. I don't know if it was in the lobby, but it's just like outside the premiere, and he invites them to an after party. Her friend that she was with also knew people at the after party, so they were like, let's go. They go to the after party, they exchange numbers, and they end up pretty much becoming inseparable for the remainder of that summer. During that first summer that she met him, he had never displayed any signs of being into anything occult, anything weird, anything that would just raise a red flag for her, right? And she really enjoyed her time with him. They were never exclusive though. He was into acting, she was also involved in entertainment projects, and their schedules were just not really conducive to a real relationship. But they saw each other whenever they could. He ended up taking a several-year contract for a movie franchise that was being filmed overseas. So he wasn't going to be around much, and they kind of parted ways. But anytime he was back in town, they would meet up, they would link up, and whatever, it was what it was. It worked for both of them. Fast forward to 2019, okay? She had seen him multiple times over the course of the years, and she felt like she knew him pretty well. He was back in town. He was in Los Angeles, and he's like, hey, I'm here for a couple nights. I'm going to be staying at this hotel. She gave me the name of the hotel, and the way that this hotel is set up is it's basically like bungalow style. So you go into the main lobby, and then there's a bunch of offshoots off the main lobby that lead to these different areas of the hotel. So she goes, yeah, I'll come meet you. I'll just meet you in the lobby. I have to eat something first. So I can't be there at 7. I'll be there at 7:20. He's like, cool, I'll see you then. She gets to the hotel at like 7:20, and she texts him. She's like, hey, I'm in the lobby. Come get me. No response. So she's sitting there for like 20-30 minutes, and he still hasn't texted her. He's not answering his calls. She's like, what is going on? Because he had never really blown her off like that before. Finally, he texts her. He's like, sorry, I was in the middle of something. I'm coming to get you. He shows up in the lobby. He's like, all right, my room's this way. She follows him outside the lobby down this corridor, and she notices the room door to his hotel room is wide open. So she walks in, and he doesn't close the door. And she's like, that's weird, kind of, right? Like, why would this actor, who most people probably know who he is, why would he have the door open? Like, aren't you worried about somebody coming in? And he just like laughed it off. He's like, it's fine. Upon walking in the room, she notices that there are oranges or clementines all over the room, and they have candles stuck in them, and they're still sort of smoking, like they had just recently been blown out. So she looks around, she's like, weird, maybe it's a scent thing, who knows, right? She just kind of doesn't think much of it, because like, why would she? The room is set up where you walk in, and there's a dining table, and then there's like a living area, and then there's a piano in the corner, and then the bedroom is a separate room off of the living area. When she walked in, she noticed that there were like some sort of small papers, maybe business cards, maybe playing cards on the piano, but she just noticed it. She clocked it, but didn't go over there to inspect it, right? They sit down at the dining table, they start catching up, they're talking, and that conversation ends with, to put it mildly, she's on the floor, and they're engaging in some adult activities, right? But after they started, he turns her and he positions her so that the crown of her head is pointed at the piano in the corner of the room. And she was sort of like, this was out of character for him anyway, because they had never really just stopped what they were doing in the middle of a conversation and gotten to that. And she found the whole thing kind of childish. Like, why wouldn't you just take me to the bedroom? But they're doing their thing, and finally she says, okay, let's go to the bed, you know? And so they get up, they go to the bed, and she notices when she walks in the bedroom, there is a Joker card, like from a deck of playing cards, shoved into the small space between the wall sconce and the wall. She says, what's that? He says verbatim, it's just something I'm working with. There's also what seems to be a dried dark brown or red substance on the bed sheets near the pillows. And she says, what's that? And she's thinking, did he have another girl here last night or something? And he says, no, it's from my knees. And he shows her his knees, and they are scraped and looked like they had been opened at one point. They do what they're gonna do, you know, and at some point he gets up to take a break. He goes to the kitchen area of the hotel room, and he comes back with a snack, and he offers her one. And this was also very out of character, but she said in retrospect, I think that was like his gift for me being his offering, which we'll get to. But he says basically like, eat it. And so she's eating it, and then he continues doing what they were doing. It is what it is, right? Afterward, he gets up, he goes to the bathroom, and she finds herself feeling very strange. And this sensation comes over her, and she starts laughing maniacally, is how she described it to me. She said, I couldn't stop laughing. I was fully conscious. I didn't know why I was laughing, but I couldn't stop. He comes out of the bathroom. He's like, are you okay? She's like, yeah, I'm fine. Let's cuddle. He says, I'm not really a cuddler. She says, well, I'm a girl who likes to be cuddled, essentially. So they get in bed. She sleeps over. She wakes up in the morning to a man standing in the bathroom. She could only sort of make him out, but she immediately jumps up because she's like, what is going on? And this man is wearing all black clothing. He's wearing skull rings, a skull necklace, and he's wearing a top hat. She covers herself. She's like, what is going on? Who is that? And this actor who she's seeing is also in the bathroom, and he's talking to him, and he calls out, he's like, don't worry, it's just my manager. Whether this guy is or isn't his manager is sort of up for debate, I guess, but now she knows that he was dressed as a Yoruba priest. Didn't know that at the time, though. So they're having a full conversation in the bathroom, and she's like, can you give me a minute? Because why is this guy in the hotel room in the morning before I've even woken up and gotten dressed, you know? So he's like, yeah, no problem. He closes the bathroom door. As they're still talking in the bathroom, she pulls on her clothes, she goes out to the living area, and then she sees on the piano the cards that she noticed last night were actually playing cards, but they were arranged in a very specific manner. She sent me a photo, which she took when they were still distracted talking in the bathroom, and I'm gonna put that on screen now so you can see and make of it what you will. But you will notice that at the top and the bottom, there are 6s and 7s arranged in a very strange pattern. So after she snaps the photo, him and his manager walk out, and the actor says, I'm gonna have my manager walk you down and wait for your car with you. I called you a car. She's like, okay. And it wasn't like a simple, nice meeting you, I'll see you later at the curb. The manager waited with her on the curb until she got in the car, and then as she pulled away, she saw him standing on the curb staring, watching her until the car turned out of view. So that was weird. She gets home, she tells her roommate about it, and her roommate immediately clocks the detail about the clementines, and she's like, I think that was an offering. Jay's like, what do you mean? She's like, yeah, have you ever heard of Ocean, who is also the deity that another famous singer is notorious for channeling. A quick Google search will probably tell you who that is, but again, I'm not naming any names. So she's like, well, why would he be doing it? And she's like, well, Ocean is the deity of love and adoration, and if you'll notice, this other celebrity singer, her fans are very loving and they adore her, and she also really, really likes citrus fruit. And then Jay reveals the details about maniacally laughing afterward, and she's like, I don't know what came over me, it was just the strangest sensation. And her roommate's like, you know, Ocean, when she's happy she cries, but when she's angry she laughs. Jay does a quick Google search. She finds out that the way that her anger is described is maniacal laughter, verbatim, which is also the thought that popped into her head. She's like, I'm laughing maniacally, and she's like, I never use that word. It was just very strange. She ends up texting the actor, okay? I'm gonna put what he said on the screen. She said I could include these, so you make of this what you will. This obviously all caused a falling out between the two. She no longer talks to him. But what gets even stranger and creepier, I think, is a few years later, she's working on a project that she's both very excited and very nervous about. She's in a completely different setting with completely different people, and she thinks back to this time, and as she's thinking about it, one of the people she's with pulls out a small clementine from his pocket and offers it to her. There's so much more to the story. There's so many more details, but this is getting really long and I'm gonna get cut off. But one of the things I asked her is, I said, what do you think the significance of the open door was? And she said, oh, well, if you think of a certain building on a certain island, the front doors were just painted on. The ones in the back were kept open because they believed that what they were channeling could come in. The doors weren't to keep something out, it was to invite something in. So whether this guy was actually channeling something or just thought he was is up for debate. But I said, what do you want people to take from this story? And she thought about it for a second. She was like, well, I always think about this thing that my grandmother said. She said, people always want to blame the devil, but he's the one that gets to punish the sinners. Now, I'm not saying everyone in Hollywood is doing things of this nature. I'm not saying that you have to do things of this nature in order to be successful. But what I think she's inferring is that she wanted people to know that these things do exist, at least to some extent. So be careful who you give your attention to.
Trigger warning, if you don't like scary stories, this is your time to go ahead and scroll, okay? Today's scary story submission gave me extra eerie vibes because it includes witchcraft. So let's get into it. Email reads, Casey, please don't use my actual name if you decide to read my story. You can call me Rachel. This happened near Manistee, Michigan. I've been debating sending it because I know how fucking ridiculous parts of it sound. But after watching some of the other Great Lakes submissions that you've gotten, I figured somebody from the UP might actually know what the hell I'm talking about. My grandmother's family was Finnish. She grew up around Marquette, Michigan, and eventually moved closer to Lake Michigan. When my grandmother died, my mom inherited a box of her things. Inside were normal family things except for this one little notebook. Most of it wasn't in English, but there were names, dates, and little symbols. But one English word did keep showing up. It was the word buried. Next to some of the names were locations. All of the locations were near Lake Michigan. My mom immediately wanted to throw the notebook away, which obviously made me ask why. She finally told me that grandma used to take things off of people. That's how she described it. She said if somebody was sick or having horrible luck, that they would come see grandma. She would do something with their hands, whisper something, then take a personal item from them, usually hair or a piece of clothing. Then she would bury it somewhere. I laughed and I said, so grandma was a witch? My mom got genuinely pissed. She said, no, they call her a noida. I'd never heard of that word before, so I obviously Googled it. And this is where it gets weird. There's actually so much documented magical folklore in Michigan's Upper Peninsula. There are stories about people supposedly stopping bleeding through touch of words, and they called them blood stoppers. There's literally an entire folklore collection called Blood Stoppers and Bear Walkers that was done in Michigan's Upper Peninsula. And Finnish tradition has its own history surrounding people called noida. So now I'm thinking, what exactly was my grandma doing? My mom refused to talk about it. 2 weeks later, my cousin and I decided to check one of the locations in Grandma's notebook. Stupid, I know. It led us to an area near Lake Michigan. We didn't expect to actually find anything, but after maybe 20 minutes, my cousin noticed the ground underneath one tree looked different. We dug. There was a little rusted metal tin, maybe 6 inches down. Inside was a strip of fabric, hair, and a piece of paper with a man's name on it. My cousin recognized the last name. It was a family we knew. So we stopped. We put everything back, buried it exactly where we found it. That night, my mom called me. She didn't even know we had gone anywhere. She said, did you dig something up? I felt physically sick. I asked how she knew. She said an old man had called her looking for grandma. My grandma had been dead for 7 years at this point. Apparently, this man was confused and kept saying he needed grandma to put it back. I told mom what we had done. She completely lost it. She said grandma didn't bury things to curse people. She buried things she believed she'd removed from them. And she said, if you found one, you better hope you put everything back. We did. At least we thought we did. The next morning, my cousin texted me a picture. There was a tiny piece of fabric stuck to the bottom of her shoe. We must have tracked it back with us. 3 days later, my cousin called me crying. She said that she had been waking up every night around the same time with dirt underneath her fingernails. She thought she was sleepwalking, so her boyfriend stayed awake to watch her. Around 3 a.m., she sat up straight in the bed, didn't say anything, walked downstairs, opened the back door, and started digging in their backyard with her bare hands. Her boyfriend stopped her. When she woke up, she didn't remember any of it. But apparently when he grabbed her, she said something to him. He had started recording earlier because she was freaking him out so badly. My mom listened to the recording. Whatever my cousin said wasn't English. My mom thinks it was Finnish. The only word she recognized was grandma's name. My cousin doesn't even speak Finnish, neither do I. So here's what I actually want to know. Anyone from an older Finnish family, or just family in general, around Marquette, Manistee, or anywhere in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan hears this, did your family ever use the word noida? Did anybody have any relatives who were maybe called blood stoppers or supposedly knew how to remove sickness, bleeding, bad luck, whatever? Has anyone ever heard of burying something afterward? Because my cousin hasn't sleepwalked again. But when we went back to that spot near Lake Michigan with my mom, the tin was gone. Dug almost 2 feet down. Nothing. My mom didn't seem surprised. Just looked at me and said, somebody already came back for it. I asked who. She said, I don't know. Then I asked the obvious question. Then how did they know where grandma buried it? My mom wouldn't answer me, and she hasn't spoken about it since. First, thank you so much for sharing your scary story and trusting me to share it on here. For some reason, this just made me crawl. I've never heard any of this lore, by the way, and I'm from Michigan. I keep telling you guys, it's like I've started getting so many submissions from Michigan that I keep learning so much Michigan lore that it's like blowing my freaking mind. So I'm going to have to Google and look this up now. Have you guys ever heard of this? Blood stoppers, anything of the sort? Let me know in the comments. And if you want to share your scary story for a chance for me to read it on my page, send it to the email above. And if you're new here and you want to hear more scary story submissions, make sure to go ahead and give me a follow. As always, thank you for watching. Love you, bye.
Some things in the woods might want to be found. Welcome back to the series where I tell true horror experiences submitted by you, the viewers. Today's true horror experience is submitted by viewer Hangai thank you so much for submitting your experience to the channel. 2 back-to-back scary camping stories. I'm going to remain ever paranoid next time I go, and I'm sure you will too. Sorry about that. Anyway, without further ado, let's get into it. Today's experience takes place in Asia, Mongolia. This happened when I was 12 years old, during winter time and right after New Year's Eve. Me and my father were visiting my grandma, who lived in this small village that was quite the distance away from our city, with the journey taking close to 2 days to complete, meaning that we would have to camp overnight along the way. We set up our tent, cooked some dinner, and went to sleep. It must have been around 4 AM when my father suddenly woke me. He looked extremely pale and absolutely terrified. I'd never seen him like this before. By this point, I was still half asleep, and it was snowing outside. But despite this, I refused to question my father, packing up the tent and all the equipment. As the car peeled off, I couldn't help but shake this sickening feeling that something or someone was following us. When I asked my father what was wrong, his eyes remained fixated on the road ahead, without saying a single word. Eventually, around midday, we arrived at my grandma's. This is where my father finally addressed his strange reaction back at camp, claiming that he had seen a wolf and that there was honestly nothing for me to worry about. I didn't really think much about it at the time. Later that evening, when we all went to bed, I was scrolling through my phone, minding my own business, but my ears were alerted to the sound of footsteps outside. They were definitely footsteps because of the loud crunch of snow underfoot. I could hear them moving around the house, but the sound that followed honestly made my stomach turn. A faint tapping on the window. For a while, I remained hunched over my bed, terrified, not daring to move or look towards the window. And with that, I could hear the sound of scratching and the hitting of the wall that I slept beside. I forced my body to shut off its senses, closing my eyes and allowing my mind to drift back asleep. Later that night, I woke again. I could hear my grandma saying spells or chanting, perhaps. And soon after, it was followed by a blood-curdling scream from outside. And then somehow I fell asleep again. The next morning, as I made my way outside, it did not take long at all to find the evidence I needed to confirm that something was there. All across the snow were these footprints that looked human enough. But most concerningly, it was what I found imprinted on the window. A handprint. But not just any handprint, no. This one appeared to have claws too. Some time had passed, and now it was March that same year. I was now home, playing games online with my friends, when I suddenly had this chill run through my body, accompanied by this intense feeling that I was being watched. Then, in the corner of my eye, I spotted something moving outside my window. I quickly flicked my eyes towards the window, but whatever it was now gone. However, I held my gaze there for a while, whether that was in fear or intrigue. And then, for a moment, just a moment, it peeked its head through my window again. And then I saw it, clear as day, a creature that my mind still struggles to comprehend. It had these bright green eyes and long horns from its head. And then as quickly as it arrived, it was now gone. I was so shocked that I just sat there, completely unable to move. When the morning rolled by, I was still sitting there in my chair, of which I had clearly fallen asleep in. My parents did take me to a local monk, who claimed that me and my dad had been followed by an unknown creature that night when we were camping. If you're wondering, I am okay now, but it would be lying to say that I didn't still dream about that creature. It certainly still haunts me to this day.
What is the scariest paranormal experience you have ever had or heard from someone you believe wouldn't lie? This was about 10 years ago, but it still gives me chills just thinking about it. My now ex-wife and I had just gotten married and moved into a new neighborhood. We moved in the winter. As spring came, we noticed that there were multiple dead animals, birds, squirrels, raccoons, in the yard. We cleaned them all up and started to do improvements to the outside of the house and painting on the inside. I started to notice strange things going on. Keys not where I left them, stuff that small. I thought I was just being forgetful. Then things slowly started to escalate. While in bed, I could swear I could hear a barely audible conversation, like a radio in a faraway room. As soon as I would try to focus on it, it would go away. I started to hear footsteps at the other end of the house. One night, while laying in bed, I hear a huge crash. Woke me up out of a dead sleep. I went into the kitchen and saw my kid's hamster cage was on the floor about 15 feet from where it was. We would put it on the fridge at night because we had a cat and didn't want it getting into it. Now I know what you're thinking, cat knocked it off. But this cage had to fly over a breakfast bar and a kitchen table to get to its resting place. Then things got ugly. I would be at home watching TV and I would have this uncontrollable thought. What would it be like to be possessed? Or, I want to be possessed. I couldn't get this thought out of my head. I couldn't concentrate on anything but that. I would literally have to say in my head, I love God, I love Jesus, over and over to get rid of the original thought. I need to add that I am not a religious person. As soon as I would leave the house, I would be fine, not one thought, but as soon as I pulled in my driveway, it would all start up again, uncontrollable. I thought I was going crazy. I sat down with my wife and looked her dead in the eyes and said, I think I'm going crazy. I've been having weird thoughts. She turned white, and before I could say any more, she said, that you want to be possessed? Come to find out, for the past month, she had been having the exact same thoughts. Then we started to compare stories. She told me that she was lying in bed without me. I worked seconds at the time, and she could hear a man whispering through the baby monitor while our child was fussing. Needless to say, we moved out within the month, ate the deposit. Her oldest daughter was still in school, and we had moved across town. I had to pick her up on the house on my days off when she got dropped off by the bus. As soon as I turned the corner, I would get those thoughts. I would sit in my car in the driveway and not even go inside and wait. My grandfather told me this story about how one time he was sitting in a chair in front of the house when he heard his wife repeatedly calling him from inside. The thing is, my grandmother had passed away a few years before that, but he told me that the voice was so pressing that he actually got up to look inside the house, and as soon as he got outside, he heard a loud crash behind him and turned around to see that the chair he had been sitting on moments ago had been crushed by the cast iron gutter that fell on it. If he wouldn't have come inside the house, he would have probably been seriously injured. I don't know if it's paranormal or not, but every time I think about it, it sends chills down my spine. This happened maybe 2 years ago. I was asleep taking a nap in the living room when I woke up to my dad saying, "Watch out for your mom." So I got up, went and looked for my mom, and found her passed out in the bathroom. She had really high blood pressure to the point where internal organs were in danger. We could get her help fast enough so things could be settled with medications only. If my dad wouldn't have waken me up, things could have ended worse. He had died 5 years prior to that from leukemia. My nephew lives with me in an old farmhouse built in the 1840s. When he was about 4 or maybe 5, he told me that there was a little boy named Charlie who lived in our house. He said Charlie had never heard of video games and that Charlie's dad had left him all alone by himself. This was around the same time that he had an imaginary friend named Mr. Cat, who was an anthropomorphic cat, so I wrote it off. A couple of weeks later, I was shaving with the bathroom door open, and I thought I could see my nephew kind of looking in at me from the corner of my eye. I stuck my head around and could see him from behind messing with the old china cabinet we keep important stuff in. And just as I walked into the room, I could see my nephew sitting in the living room watching TV. He couldn't have crossed that much distance that fast or silently. I asked him about it and he said, "Oh yeah, that was Charlie. He says there's a really super book in there from when you were a little boy." And at the bottom of this stack of old documents and stuff in the china cabinet is a book I got as a gift when I was a kid. I didn't even know it was in there. It was under 2 boxes of documents and couldn't have been seen until the boxes were lifted out. The little boy didn't look like you think of ghosts. He wasn't transparent, he didn't float, he didn't look spooky, he just looked like a kid. Now I'm convinced that people see ghosts, or whatever they are, every day and don't realize it because they look just as real as we do. I haven't been able to find any information on the people who lived here in the past. My grandparents bought the home in 1967. I asked my grandmother about it, and she said she wasn't surprised I saw Charlie in the bathroom at all, because when I was little, I played with a little boy I said was named Homer, and Homer would unroll all the toilet paper when nobody was home. Before I was born, my father and mother had a small apartment together. My mother told me that once she went into the basement and saw a woman standing at the base of the steps, just staring at her, and then she just vanished. Then my father was in the shower, one with a sliding glass door that you can barely make out what's on the other side, when a large figure walked up to the other side of the glass and banged on it, making it blow out. My mother found him in the fetal position in the shower, covered in glass, and no one was around. The last one made them move out. He confirmed that it happened, but doesn't like to talk about it. He's a relatively tough dude, so for something to scare him that much means a lot. Somewhere in between those 2 occurrences, they came home to find absolutely everything moved over about an inch. They realized this because they're not very good at dusting. Let me know your true paranormal experiences in the comments, and if you want to see more videos like this, check out the playlist on my page.
This is so scary. So a woman was home alone one night when her phone started ringing, but when she looked down at the number calling her, it was her own phone number. So she's like, what? But then she's like, it must just be a glitch. So she ignores it. But then a couple minutes later, the phone starts ringing again, and guess what? It's her own phone number. So she answers, and she hears her own voice on the phone talking to her, and the voice says, don't go upstairs. Like, she literally heard herself say that. So she freaks out and hangs up and then checks her phone, but there's no recording, there's no missed call, there's no explanation as to how her own phone number was ringing her. Then, about 10 minutes later, her phone rings again, and it's her number ringing her again. So she answers, and this time the voice says, he's upstairs. So she goes, locks all her doors, checks every room in her house, but there is no one there. Then the phone rings again. Now this time she lets it ring and ring and ring, and it rings about 10 times until she finally answers the phone, and this time she hears herself crying. Then the voice says, please don't turn around, and she freaks out because she starts to realise she can hear someone breathing behind her. So she rings the police come, they check everywhere, they can't find anything. But when they check her phone, they realise that the number that was ringing her wasn't actually her number. Someone had basically spoofed it to look like it's her number. The police couldn't find any answers, and then she eventually moves out, right? But then she gets one final phone call months after she moves out. And again, it is her number and it is her voice. And the voice said, I told you not to go upstairs. What does that mean? What do you mean? What do you mean?
The person that sent me this story called it What Was Lurking Outside My House. Ooh. By the way, if you have a story that you'd like to share with our glitch community about glitches in the Matrix, dreams, aliens, cryptids, or the paranormal, you can send it to this email address. And remember, we believe you. Hello. Hi. My name is Courtney. I live in Helena, Montana. Is it Helena or Helena, Montana? A little backstory. I moved in with my husband about 2 to 3 years ago. We live on 5 acres in a mountainous area a few miles from a lake. That sounds fucking beautiful. I just want to say that. We have 4 dogs, a corgi. If you know me, I love corgis. English bulldog, German shepherd, husky mix, and a border collie. And only one of them barks at everything, the corgi. I have only ever seen the 3 larger dogs bark at someone with a flashlight looking into my windows, and the only other time was at a bear, never at a deer. January-ish of 2025, around 11 o'clock p.m., my husband was at his overnight job, and I was laying in bed when my dog started going nuts. The corgi was on the end of the bed staring out the window, barking with his hackles up. The English bulldog was sitting right next to me, growling and barking with his hackles up while staring out the same window as the corgi. Our window shades were closed. The German shepherd mix and border collie were at a closed bedroom door, growling and barking with their hackles up. While they were barking and growling, I had this terrifying feeling, not just from them barking, but a full body chill, terrified feeling. I couldn't hear anything outside. I called my husband in a panic and he said to stay in the room and he would check the property when he got home a few hours later. A few hours later is a really long time to stay in the house, husband. After about 20 to 30 minutes of them freaking out, they settled down and came to check on me. After they settled down, about 10 minutes later, I grabbed one of the dogs and searched the house with her. Brave. Our living space is one level with one bedroom and no one was inside. I went back to the room and sat there silently listening for any noise that may be outside. After about 30 minutes of trying to figure out what could have caused them to freak out, the English bulldog needed to use the bathroom, and so I gathered myself and walked outside with him on a leash. He paused just outside the front door and was scanning the yard, which he never does, and slowly walked further out into the snow and used the bathroom, all while scanning the area. Once he was finished, I searched for any animal tracks near the house. It had freshly snowed, and I saw near the front door were cat-like paw prints. These prints were not small enough to be a house cat, but not big enough to be a mountain lion. The weird part was, just to the left of the door, they just randomly appeared. They didn't come from any other direction. They just appeared there, and it walked directly against the house. My dog and I ran inside quickly. I couldn't explain in that moment how it could have appeared like that, but I chalked it up to being a bobcat, even though we never have them near our house. When my husband got home, he searched and saw that they were actually baby deer prints, which is very weird to me, as my dogs, other than the corgi, do not bark at deer no matter how close they get. Even stranger part is that the deer prints just disappear after turning the corner of the house. There's absolutely no prints leading away from the house. And what deer, even a baby, would get directly up against the house with dogs barking? This year, in January, I was trying to quit vaping and went to have my last smoke break outside before bed around 1 o'clock a.m. I had a chair outside our front door to sit in while I smoked. After closing the door behind me, I scanned the area with my phone flashlight to see if there were any deer or other animals nearby so neither of us would be startled. I saw absolutely nothing. It was a quiet night as we don't have insects or birds making noise during this time of year, and there was no wind. I sat down in the chair, still scanning around just to be sure, and after a few minutes, I hear this loud, deep, guttural growl right beside me. I didn't turn around to look and see what it was. I just ran inside as fast as I could. I don't know what it was, but it didn't sound like an animal or a human. The ground had no snow, but had dried leaves and sticks everywhere. You wouldn't have been able to step anywhere without making noise, but I heard absolutely nothing before that growl. My senses are always heightened when outside alone due to previous activity from animals at my last house I lived alone at. Not hearing anything before the growl absolutely terrified me. I have not been outside alone since. I don't know what it could have been. What do you think was lurking around my house? The end! I'm gonna be straight with you. I don't know. I don't know. If it was deer prints, okay, let's go with that, right? Let's be Sam and Dean Winchester right now. Let's hit the books. Let's check the lore. If it's deer prints, what beings make a deer print? Okay, we have a deer woman, which apparently is a spirit. I've never heard of a deer woman. A spirit of an oral tradition of various indigenous peoples of the Great Plains of Eastern Woodlands. She often appears as an alluring human woman, but her true nature is revealed by her deer hooves, which leave distinct tracks in snow or dust. Okay, so deer woman. A not deer. We've all heard of the not deer, right? A viral internet cryptid rooted in modern Appalachian folklore. Sightings describe creatures that look like white-tailed deer at a glance, but possess uncanny traits upon closer inspection. Most unnervingly, disjointed movements, incorrect jaw proportions, or walking upright on their hind legs like a bipedal entity with hooves. Then we have a deer man, a regional cryptid reported in parts of North America and Canada. Accounts describe a hybrid form with a stag's head and antlers paired with a muscular torso and bipedal legs or hooved feet. And then we have a Wendigo. Originating in the Algonquin traditional lore, the Wendigo is a malevolent, cannibalistic spirit, while traditional stories describe a gaunt or giant humanoid, ice-hearted monster. Modern pop culture and internet horror communities frequently conflate it with a skulled or hooved deer man imagery. Okay, so these are the four big ones, I think, that it could be. Deer woman, a deer man, a not deer, or a Wendigo. I'm going to say not a Wendigo because I feel like the Wendigo, right, a thing of theirs is that they're like, you don't see them a lot. You'll first hear them. Don't they like use the screams of their last victims or something to like lure you in? Isn't that a thing? But maybe it was one of the other ones. I don't know. It has to be something, right? Obviously it's something, but it has to be not a regular deer because like they said, a deer wouldn't be just like walking up against the fucking house. Also, how is it coming out of nowhere? The prints are starting out of nowhere and they're ending out of nowhere. Like, if it was like a regular thing, there would be tracks leading up to and leaving, but there wasn't. So that's weird. And the fact that all of your dogs, like Corgi aside, all of your dogs had an issue, something was wrong. Like, it was definitely something not human and not a deer. This is really scary. I'm glad you're okay. What do you guys think it was? Do you think it was a deer woman, a deer man, a not deer, a Wendigo, or something else? Let me know in the comments.
Slender Man is absolutely real. Now, it's sort of a retelling of a very old story. You see, the Slender Man has gone by many names. Some people call him Stick Man, the Rake, a Crawler, and even Walking Sam. But one thing's for certain, everyone describes him exactly the same. This very tall figure that is skinny and lanky with these spindly fingers and this pale white face. And it's said to prey on young people. Now, there was a story out of California. There's this man named Kelvin. Kelvin loved the outdoors. And he spent most of his time outside of Los Angeles visiting different national forests and parks and exploring new places. We said one weekend he went out to the San Bernardino forest and he had been hiking on these trails all day. Well, it started to get dark. He gets in his car and he starts driving down this very rural road. As he's driving in his car, he has his windows down. It was a very nice night. And he could hear all of the sounds of the forest. And as he looks out in front of him, he said he noticed up ahead on the road, standing to the side of it, there was something that looked like a telephone pole. And that's what he thought it was at first, until he managed to get closer. So that's when he sees what looks like a very, very tall man, very skinny, pale white skin, and sort of this strange looking body. He said as his headlights hit this thing, it took off into the forest. Now, he was so distracted by what he'd seen, he nearly drives off the road, and he smashes his front tire on a rock, and he gets flat. So he gets out of his car, and he goes to the back of his vehicle, and he finds spare, and he starts changing the tire. Well, he starts to notice this forest that felt like it was alive, that was full of sounds, has now gone completely silent. So that's when he starts to hear it. This wailing sound that almost sounded like a woman screaming or crying like she was in trouble. So Calvin gets up and he looks around. And he says, "Hello? Is anybody there? Are you okay? Hello?" He doesn't hear a response. So he makes the mistake of following this sound. He goes into the woods. And he finds himself on this little trail. And he could hear the sound coming from one direction. The closer he got, the louder it got. And that's when he all of a sudden notices standing next to a tree this very tall figure. And he could see he was wearing some sort of black suit. And he had this bald, pale white head. These sort of long arms that went past his knees. And as he walks towards this thing, he says, "Excuse me, are you okay?" He said this thing just turned around slowly and looked at him. But it didn't have a face. It was just skin covering the front of its head. And so he took off running. And he said this thing began to pursue him. Except it was running on all fours. He ran as fast as he could, but this thing kept up with him. So that's when he made the decision. There was a hill. And he decided to jump down this hill and just tumble. And he tumbled and tumbled and tumbled and finally makes it to the bottom of this hill. He's badly banged up. His legs hurt. But he manages to get back to the road. He gets in his car and he drives off, even with the flat tire. When he finally made it to a gas station, he runs inside and he falls to the ground. Said the next thing he knew, he was in a hospital, and they told him all he was saying over and over again was, "Don't let the pale white man get me. Don't let the pale white man get me." So what do you think? Is the Slender Man real?
My dad glitched. For the story, we're going to call this person B. B says that they've had many of what they believe to be glitches happen in their lives, but the most outstanding one would have been the time that their dad glitched. B says that this happened on a Wednesday back in 2012. His dad usually gets home from work at 5 p.m. B is sitting on the couch with his mom, just watching TV. Now, B said while the TV was on, he was mostly looking down at his phone, only glancing up every once in a while just to kind of check out what was going on the TV. So B says that he hears the sound of the garage door lift and open, the alarm being turned off with each press of the buttons. He's thinking Dad must be home, and he hears his footsteps walking into the kitchen and his large hunk of keys slam down on the counter. And B says, I look behind me. He said the kitchen is behind the couch. And he's wearing a shirt he wears often. It was a plaid short sleeve shirt that was blue. He says, "Hey, Dad," but then returns down looking at his phone. And then B's mom looks behind the couch and says, "Hey, sweetheart, how was work?" And nothing. He doesn't reply. And B looks up and now Dad's just gone. He just assumed that maybe his dad went out to the car to grab something, and his mother assumed the same thing. But after a little while, he doesn't come back in. So B's mom calls him and asks, "Where did you go?" And he goes, "What do you mean? I'm at work." And sure enough, B looks at the clock and it's only 3 p.m. Remember, Dad gets home around 5 every day. So B's mom goes on to explain to him what exactly happened, what they just saw, and he swears he is at work. He never left. He absolutely did not come home recently. He says it still freaks us out today. I'd say so. I have heard so many stories that were very similar to that one. So freaking interesting. Drop your thoughts in the comments, y'all. Let me know if you've ever experienced a glitch like that. If you've got a creepy glitch story of your own, please send it in. And if you're interested in merch, check out the link in my bio and follow along for more creepy story time.
Here are more spooky stories that I found in my TikTok comments. Let's go! When my youngest brother was about 4 or 5, he told me he was scared of the girl in the blue dress in my room. I asked him where she was, and he pointed to my dresser drawers. I found my old China doll, a girl in a blue dress, behind it. I remember being around 13. I heard a kid in my dream named Adam saying, help me," then getting choked. I woke up with bruises around my neck. Turns out my aunts did a Ouija board in the house when they were around my age, and the kid they summoned was named Adam. They never brought that up until then. I was on a FaceTime call with my sister late at night, and she had placed me facing the kitchen. She left the frame to go get something, and I was singing waiting for her when a blonde, long-haired girl walked by. I smiled at her and waved, even though she just looked at me and then left the frame. I told my sister how rude her friend was, and she told me she was home alone. Mind you, my sister was bigger and had short brown hair. She was scared to sleep that night. So I'll preface this with the obligatory, I don't really believe in the supernatural. But when my best friend and I were in middle school, we got really into candle magic. We walked about 1.5 miles down to a little park by a lake near my house. We did a spell to summon Damien. I will say again, we were in middle school. Well, while we are walking back to my house, a car stops to ask us if we need a ride. A nice car with a vanity plate that read Damien. My friend refused the ride, but I jumped in and chatted briefly as he swung me by my place. He was a lawyer. To this day, my friend and I joke about the son of Satan being a lawyer. I know you were in middle school, but this is a PSA to never hop in a car with strangers. I was at my mom's house where I'd grown up seeing things until I was around 10. I am now 19. I was staying over on the sofa and I was in the dark watching a video. and I could hear breathing from the kitchen and what sounded like dogs' paws hitting the floor, so I assumed my dog was walking around the kitchen. It got closer to the door and the breathing started getting louder and louder, so I paused my video and listened, and once it was right behind the door, it sounded human. Someone was angry behind the door. My dog got up from next to me and ran at the door, barking aggressively. I ran straight upstairs. He heard it as well, and it wasn't him on the other side. Me and my brother searched the house, and it was all locked and no air could have gotten in. Unexplainable. I have a little ghost girl in my house, maybe around 7, and she was a very curious spirit. But about a year and a half ago, I had just laid down to go to sleep, and as I'm falling asleep, I hear footsteps come into my room right next to my bed. After a minute or so, I felt something sit at the edge of my bed, which I thought was my cat, until I felt the pressure release from the foot of my bed and move closer up to my stomach, and then sat right next to me. Then I just felt something hovering over my face, like as if she were observing my face or just watching me. I was too scared to open my eyes, so I fell asleep with her just staring at me. Once, I wanted to decorate my room, so I went to a city center to the shopping mall. I looked at some clothes, shopped a little, and then I wanted to print out photos. I picked 10 normal photos and 2 photo strips. I printed them and didn't really think anything of it. When I opened the envelope with the photos and looked at them, I found one that I've never seen in my life. It was a lady lying on a bed in a dark room, and you could only see her from the neck down on that photo. I've never seen that photo before. I was terrified. I ripped the photo up so nobody could see it and only told my friend. She reassured me that it was probably some error. I looked at the receipt. I only paid for 12 photos. The creepy one was the 13th. I remember one day I heard a really loud bang. Me and my mom heard it, and we went into the kitchen to see all the glass from the cabinet on the floor smashed. The cabinet door had been opened as well, even though we always close it. The glass shelf the cups were on was also on the floor, smashed, like someone had opened the cabinet, pulled it out onto the floor. Here's some proof. To this day, we cannot figure out what happened. Here is a picture of the kitchen. Part of me is kind of wondering if maybe there's a scientific explanation, like heat, but for all of the glass to have shattered like that, definitely seems odd. As always, I love these stories, and I've missed you all. I'm very excited to keep reading more spooky stories, so please keep them coming. Okay, bye!
I was trying to think that Black Eyed Kids are retired because it's been a really long time since I've come across a Black Eyed story time. I feel like all the ones that I've talked about happened like in the 90s, even the early 2000s. But I recently came across one that literally just happened in 2026, this year. January of this year, someone had a Black Eyed child encounter, so they're still around. This story happened to a man that was traveling late one night. He said he had been in this long stretch of highway for hours. I was located like right outside of Kentucky when he decided to stop at one of those rest stops because he really needed to use the bathroom. He says when he pulled into the rest stop, there was no other cars there. The rest stop was completely isolated. He decided to get out of the car, use the bathroom, and come back out. When he got out of the bathroom and he's walking back to his car, he felt the sensation like he was being watched. It was like a very eerie, like unsettling sensation. So he looked around and didn't see anyone and decided that this was time for him to kind of like pick up his step, get in his car, and probably leave. When he gets in his car, he finally gets in, he locks his door, he's about to like back out of the parking spot when he sees 2 children standing right next to the passenger side of the car. Those kids couldn't be any older than about 10 to 12 years old. They're just like standing there watching him. He's a little startled because why are these children out here in the middle of nowhere practically with no one else around? He then decides to pull his window down just enough to like hear the kids talking when he hears one of the children say, "Can you give us a ride home?" Okay, this man's first instinct was to unlock his door and let them in because, I mean, that's like the first humanly instinct. You see children in despair or in need, you're gonna want to go help them. So his first instinct is to unlock the door, but something within him screamed and yelled, "Don't." Then the kids, almost as if they could read his mind and know that he was hesitating to open the door, say, "Our parents are waiting for us. We really need to go home." That's when the man noticed that these kids were talking with absolutely no emotion behind what they were saying. He got a closer look at them and saw that they were wearing like very dated clothing, like from the 1900s sort of clothing. The man says that for whatever reason, he felt compelled to open the door and let them in. He couldn't explain it. He couldn't control it. Something was just like forcing him to open the door. When he got a closer look at the oldest, the 12-year-old's eyes, and saw that the eyes were completely blacked out. Like there was no white in his eyes. It was just pure black. This completely freaked him out. He rolled up his windows and he drove off. And the children just stood there completely emotionless. They weren't angry. They weren't begging. They were just kind of like, as he was driving away, he could still see the children just standing there in the parking lot, just watching him drive off.
and eventually he got far enough away where they completely just disappeared out of his sight. So whether you believe in the black-eyed children or not, stories like that will forever get to me because I myself have encountered one. If you guys have been following me long enough, you know that I had one come knocking on my door one night. So I know they exist. It's not urban legend. It's real.
Snacks in hand, the vibe is set, and once I start, don't eat too much because you gotta stay fine. But come on, besties. Yeah. Hey, bestie boo, I missed you so much. You know it's time to get your snack, right? I have mine. I have some Kinnip. Also, get your gardening essentials. Get it ready. You already know. So, for the sake of the story, let's call this guy Gary. So, Gary is one of my silent followers, and he's been following me since like 2021. But in 2021, he was 20 years old, so he's 25 now. Since he was 19 years old, he was with this girl. Let's call her Nia. So he'd been with this girl since he was 19 years old. Their relationship was absolutely great. Like, that was the woman for him. However, they did end up breaking up. Not because, like, anybody cheated or anything like that. Their lives were just, like, moving in different directions. He wanted to lock it down. Like, he wanted to get engaged and get married. But Nia felt held down by, like, family responsibilities where she's like, I don't think I'm ready for this yet. So ultimately, they ended up breaking up earlier this year. Now, about a month and a half goes past, right? And he's feeling terrible. Like, he is not getting any better. He's absolutely heartbroken. Like, he's trying so hard not to run back to her and just be like, Nia, please just marry me. Nia was the one that broke up with him because she felt as though right now she needs to handle her family responsibilities, but she loves him a lot and she wants to marry him. And because right now she's all tied up, she feels like it's not fair to him and she doesn't want to ask him to wait for her to, you know? So she was just like, hey, maybe we should just go separate ways. And he is devastated. Now, when I first came out with my book, he had got it just for the purpose of, like, supporting me. He didn't really feel like he needed it. His relationship was going great. His job, you know, everything was going great. So he never felt the need to, like, use the book until the breakup, and he's, like, super out of his head, ready to crash out every day. So he thought to himself, like, hey, maybe I need to cleanse a little bit, like, just to help me get over this breakup. Maybe I need to get closer to God. So he ultimately decided to do a spiritual bath and followed it by the fast. This is where it starts getting interesting because after he does this, right, he feels like there's a weight lifted off his shoulder. He still misses Nia, of course, like that's the love of his life. But he does not feel as miserable as he was feeling before that. Like, he actually feels like the sun is shining. He's actually going out with his friends now. Cool. About 2 weeks after he does the fast, right, he went out with his friends and he meets this girl. Let's call her Ari. He meets this girl through one of his friends, so she's like a mutual friend. He meets Ari, and Ari is, like, perfect for him. Like, literally everything that he was looking for in Nia. Not saying that Nia didn't have it, but it's like Ari is better in a way. It's almost, like, too good to be true, right? But then he thought about it. He was like, oh, my gosh, I just did the fast, like, 2 weeks ago. So maybe this is, like, God aligning me with the person that's actually supposed to be for me. But, of course, he's still not over Nia, but he's like, hey, man, I can't keep being, like, heartbroken over this girl. I gotta move on. Boom. Him and Ari start to date, and they date for, like, a couple of weeks, and everything is going great. Like, he's having fun. He's having the time of his life. He really likes this girl. But part of him feels so guilty because he still loves Nia. And he feels like he's cheating on Nia because, like, he's been with Nia for, like, years. This is the first time he actually took interest in another girl, and he likes that girl. So, boom, whatever. He takes Ari on a date, and they drink a little bit, and they go back to his place. One thing led to another, and they're about to do it. But they couldn't because he couldn't get his buddy awake. He couldn't get him up. It don't matter what Ari was doing, he couldn't get him up. So he's feeling super embarrassed because this has never happened to him before. Like, him and Nia literally would go at it all the time. So he's like, what the hell? Like, he's apologizing. And so ultimately they decided, you know, maybe tonight's not the night, but we're going to try this again. And they indeed tried again. It happens again the second time, and it happens again the third time. And at this point, Ari is like, yeah, do you just not like me? Like, because I feel like if you liked me, you either don't like me or you have a medical issue that you need to go get it checked out. And he agreed. He went to the doctor. Doctors did tests and stuff like that. He didn't want to get into too many details, and I understand because it's like really embarrassing. But whatever test doctors do, they did it and they found nothing wrong. The crazy thing is when he's at home and he's thinking about Nia, or he's looking at like old pictures of Nia, his buddy would get up. Here's the thing though, you know how I said that they met through like a mutual friend? That mutual friend didn't really approve of their relationship. Gary felt it, Gary kind of knew it, and when Gary asked that mutual friend about it, she just like kind of like brushed it off. But like you can clearly tell that she does not approve of their getting along. At this point, Gary is like super embarrassed, so he tries to like, he doesn't know how to react to that, so he kind of like distanced himself from Ari a little bit, and Ari gets her feelings hurt. So Ari gets to try to be petty. Like she's going on social media subbing him. Like when he would ask her about it, she would be like, oh no, I wasn't talking about you. When they're all around like their friends, she would say slight comments referring to that. And Gary would be like, whoa, like what was, like why are you doing that? So eventually Gary gets tired of that whole thing happening, so he goes to the mutual friend and he's like, yo, I know you never liked our relationship in the first place, and I really feel like your friend is trying to be funny. I see her social media posts. She keep trying to make it seem like she's not talking about me, saying slick stuff around all of our friends. I know she's trying to be funny. Like, can you please talk to your friend and tell her to stop? The friend is like, really? Like, what are you talking about? What happened? And he didn't want to at first, but then he ended up telling her what happened all 3 nights they tried to do it. And when he tells her, she literally widens her eyes like, oh my God, you're protected. It's like, what? What do you mean I'm protected? Come to find out, a few days before they're having this conversation, Ari's ex hit her up to basically tell her like, hey, I think you might have an STD because I have an STD. Mind you, she was just sexually active with that ex the month prior. He's like super toxic, but like Ari wouldn't just not stop messing with him. The reason why she didn't approve of their relationship was because she knew that Ari was going to end up going back to that ex, and she knows Gary, and Gary has like a genuine heart. So if she saw that Gary liked her, he genuinely liked her. At this point, Ari had set an appointment to go find out if she had an STD. Within that time frame, they would have done it, and he possibly would have gotten that STD. He was in shock. And at that point, he was like, you know what? Dating is not for me. He thanked the friend. He was like, thank you so much for telling me. I know that's like her business and stuff, but like, thank you for telling me. You know I'm not about to go around telling her business, but tell her to chill out. The friend is like, yeah, for sure. I'm going to talk to her. I'm going to tell her to chill because she shouldn't even be acting like that with you. So that happens, and about a few days after that, he gets a phone call from Nia. Nia is in absolute tears. She's apologizing to him. She's like, babe, I'm so sorry. Like, I've been trying to like stand on business, but like I'm becoming a woman and I need to worry about myself too. I'm so worried about my family because she has, you know, immigrant families, and you know how that goes, especially when you're the eldest. You're expected to do so much for your immigrant family, and she kind of fell into that trap. But the little time that Gary wasn't in her life, she's like, oh no, this is not the life for me. I'd rather be with Gary than be wasting my time with y'all. I mean, she loves her family and all, but anyway, y'all get it. So she's like, Gary, I want to get back together. Let's get married. Let's do everything you wanted to do. Good news is they are now currently engaged, so congratulations, Gary. That was a close one. Could you imagine? Did my book have anything to do with it? I don't know. You guys tell me. It may not. It may be a coincidence. I felt like the book did have something to do with it, but I know how y'all be. Y'all gonna say I'm just saying this because whatever. Not all of you guys, obviously, but that's the story, y'all. Don't forget to let me know what you were eating in the comments. And I'm going to try my best to upload a new YouTube video today. So if you want to listen to my stories in long form, go ahead and watch that. Don't watch nobody else's because they're making money off of me. Yeah, don't forget to get your book. Oh, I'm having a sale this Friday like we always do from 12 p.m. to 3 p.m. Eastern time. This is for the ones that are out the country and can't really afford it because like the money currency thing is like a huge difference. But yeah, y'all. Okay. I love you. Bye.
My apartment complex had one rule that nobody ever explained to me, and it was if you saw the woman living in 3B, don't ever let her know that you're alone. I moved into a small apartment complex when I was 22 years old. It was a very old complex, but it was clean and it was cheap enough that I could pay the rent. There was only 12 other apartments by me, so I got to know my neighbors really quick. I never really saw her outside of her apartment, but I never really saw her going out of her apartment complex, but I did see her out like in the hallway, and she would just be standing there sometimes. I don't know if she was like totally in her right mind, so I just kind of left it. But I do remember the first time I ever saw her, I did smile and I said hello, and she didn't respond. She just kind of stared at me. She didn't smile or anything, and then she slowly walked back into her apartment. And that was, I don't know, it was a little bit weird, so I went and I brought it up to my downstairs neighbor. He asked me if she talked to me, and I said no, she didn't say anything back. And he said, oh, okay, well just leave it alone, like, just don't ever let her know when you're home alone. And I thought maybe it's because like she would want to like come over and hang out or something, like she just needs some company. But then he explained, he's like, no, she has a habit of like knocking on people's doors really late at night asking if they're alone. Fast forward months later, I was coming home from work. It was about 11 p.m. at night, and I passed her on my way into my apartment, and she actually said something to me this time. She randomly just said, is anybody with you? And out of instinct of just telling the truth, I said no. And then she did like a smile, and it wasn't like a normal like friendly smile. It was like a very small like I don't know, it was creepy. And then she went back into her apartment. I immediately regretted how I answered. Nothing really happened, but the next morning I went and I asked the landlord about her, and he told me that she's lived there for about 30 years. He said she doesn't really bother anybody, so just like leave her alone. Then one afternoon I came home and I noticed something really strange. I passed by her apartment and her door was like wide open. So I just kind of like peeked inside, and there wasn't any furniture, there wasn't any pictures. It was like nobody had been living there, so I just assumed that she moved out. So again, being the nosy neighbor that I am, I went and I talked to the landlord. And then he finally told me the truth. He said, okay, so I didn't tell you this before, but apartment 3B has been occupied in 8 years. And I was like, what do you mean? I literally brought this up to you like a while ago. And he was like, yes, I don't like to tell people this because I know they get spooked, because there are people that have had occurrences where they've ran into like this elderly woman. And I was like, no, like she's literally talked to me before. And he said, what did she say? And I said that she asked if I was alone, and that's when he went a little bit quiet. And he's like, yeah, so the lady that passed away 8 years ago, she had a habit of asking neighbors if they were alone. I try not to let this get to me, but it just spooked me every single time I passed the apartment, because I know that I saw the spirit of this woman. I'm not crazy. And so I actually did wind up moving about a month later, but here's the thing that I can't explain. The day that I was moving out, her apartment was wide open again, and I saw like a pair of gray slippers, not right in front of the doorway, but kind of off to the side. So like you'd have to like somewhat peek in to see them. And I know that those gray slippers were not there before. After I saw that, I just kind of closed the door because my brain started to spiral on what that could have been. And then that was the first time that I really thought about why everybody kept telling me like that to never let her know that you were alone. And it's because whoever was using that apartment was obviously paying attention.
There's a place in Denver, Colorado that's known as Riverdale Road, and it is probably one of the most haunted roads in America. It's known from everything from demons to skinwalkers to ghosts. This is one road I would not want to drive alone at night. Now, this story comes from a young man named Kevin who lived in Denver for a few years. He said one night he just was bored and he decided he was just going to drive around town. So he gets in his car and he doesn't really have a particular destination. He just figured, he would let the night take him where he would drive to. So as he's driving, he just would get this feeling like I should turn this way, I should take this exit, I should head in this direction. And it leads him to Riverdale Road. So as he's driving down Riverdale, he gets to this part where there is train tracks, and he just starts getting this weird, creepy feeling like something is watching him. And part of him wants to find the nearest road he can turn off on to and get off this road, but something is intriguing to him and makes him want to stay on this road. So as he's driving, all of a sudden, his radio turns on by itself, and the song Imagine Dragons Demons starts playing by itself. And he turns the radio off, but the radio continues to play. And so he starts, kind of banging on the like, what's going on with what's happening with the CD player? And finally, it turns off. So he thinks, okay, maybe there's some kind of electrical problems or something. But he keeps on driving. Well, all of a sudden, he starts to get that feeling once again, like he's being watched. And he feels like there's someone sitting in the back seat. When he turns around and looks, he can see two red eyes staring at him from the back seat. He can't see a body, he can't see a person. It's just completely dark. And there's two red eyes staring at him. So Kevin is just kind of, at this point, freaked out and doesn't know what to do. And he keeps looking back, and the eyes are still there. So he starts talking to these eyes, and he says, look, I don't know who you are or what you want from me. I'm sorry I came on this road. I'll get off if you want. And he looks back again, and boom, the eyes are gone. There's no one back there. So Kevin, is like, it's time to get off this road. But as he kept driving, he would turn off onto a street, and he would find himself back on Riverdale Road. And no matter how many times he turned or where he exited, he couldn't get off this road. So he pulls over, and he gets on his cell phone, and he starts trying to call his friend to see, if he could come meet him there and help him figure out how to get off this road. But his phone isn't working, and he's getting no service, which he thinks is weird because most places in Denver, he gets service, and he never had an issue with his phone. So as he's sitting there in his phone, he all of a sudden sees a shadow out of the corner of his eye. And a man walks up to the side of his car, and he can't see his face. He can't see the upper part of him because he's, standing up over the car. But the man bends down, and he looks into the window, and he can see the man has red eyes and this just pale face. And the man touches the window, and all of a sudden, he could see smoke coming from this guy's hand as he touches the window. And so Kevin just slams on the gas and just starts, speeding off down the road. And he remembers this prayer that his mom taught him when he was younger. And he starts saying this prayer over and over again. And finally he sees a road he could turn onto, and he turns off onto this road. And he manages to get off of Riverdale Road. And he said he will never drive on that road or near that road ever again.
Let's read a scary Reddit story. I am obsessed with reading people's paranormal encounters on Reddit, and I want to share some of these scariest stories I've come across. The first time I read the story was in public and in broad daylight, and it still scared the shit out of me, so get ready. This happened when I was 17 years old. My family, my mom, dad, sister, and I had previously immigrated to another country. Over the summer of 2018, we returned to our home country for a vacation. My parents had some business in the city, so we were staying in my paternal grandparents' old house. At night, my sister was having a sleepover at an old friend's house, so it was just me and my parents. I slept on the top bunk of a bunk bed. I don't know what the exact time was, somewhere between 1 and 4 a.m. I woke up feeling very cold. Now this was already weird because this was a hot country in July, around 35 to 40 degrees Celsius during the day. I found an old blanket in the wardrobe, wrapped myself up, and tried to get back to sleep. As I did so, I turned on my right side. From this angle, I was able to see out of my open door and into my parents' bedroom. Of course, it was pitch black, so I couldn't actually see anything in their room. As I felt myself starting to fall asleep, I noticed some weird movement in my parents' bedroom, near the floor by the door frame. I kept looking, and then slowly, from my parents' bedroom, a woman emerged. It's hard to describe how she moved. Basically, her legs were completely paralyzed. They just hung limp behind her. She had propped herself up on her arms and was using them to move forward, but she wasn't crawling exactly. Her arms were fully extended, elbows locked out. She was using them kind of like stilts, waddling forward, dragging the rest of her body along. I couldn't make out her face, and she continued to crawl past the door frame and beyond my field of vision. I was obviously terrified, but I had never believed in anything supernatural. I rationalized that it must be my mother. I knew she used to sleepwalk as a child. Maybe she was doing it again? It didn't make much sense because that woman had longer hair than my mother, but for some reason that I cannot explain, that did not occur to me until later.
I steeled my nerves, climbed down the bunk bed, and walked into the kitchen. And there, I saw her, face pressed against the wall, not moving, in the same position as earlier. In my mind, primed to see her as my sleepwalking mother, she had sleptwalked across the room and had now fallen back asleep. I walked up to her to wake her up, but something told me to go wake up my dad first. I went into my parents' room and only one person was in the bed. That was a relief to me. In the pitch black, I reached out to shake my dad's shoulder. "Dad, wake up. Mom is sleepwalking again." But she has longer hair. To my terror, my mom's voice answers, "What? Why are you up?" The person on the bed in front of me is my mom. My blood literally runs cold. I have never felt a more primal sense of fear in my whole life. I start going crazy about how there's a woman in our house. My mom gets up, we go into the kitchen, turn on the lights, and there's no one there. My dad, who is in the living room, hears all the noise and comes to ask what's going on. I explain, but they both dismiss it as a dream and tell me to go back to sleep. I try to explain it couldn't have been a dream because I was literally walking around the kitchen with that woman still there. But to this day, they still claim I had a bad dream. This story freaked me out so bad because of the way they described how this creature or entity was crawling around their house. I can just picture it so clearly in my head, and it is terrifying. Have you ever had an experience like this?
I woke up at 3 in the morning because my college roommate was whispering under my bed. This is Scared with Jess, and today's story is about when I realized that there was something seriously wrong with the girl I was living with. At first, I thought I was dreaming. The whispering was so fast I couldn't make out a single word. And then I heard her say my name. I completely froze. My roommate's bedroom was across the hall. There was absolutely no reason for her to be underneath my bed. I was too scared to move, so I closed my eyes and pretended I was still asleep. The whispering continued for another minute, and then it stopped. I felt the mattress shift underneath me, and then slowly she crawled out. I could hear her hands moving across the carpet, and then she stood beside my bed. She stayed there for what felt like forever. I kept my breathing slow and didn't open my eyes. Eventually, she walked out of my room and quietly closed the door. A few seconds later, I heard her bedroom door close across the hall. I didn't sleep again that night. She had already been acting strange for a couple of weeks, and she barely talked to me anymore. She kept her bedroom locked whenever she left, and sometimes I would catch her staring at me from across the apartment. And instead of looking away, she would just keep staring. But until that night, I never felt afraid of her. The next morning, I casually asked if she had come into my room, and she looked at me like I was crazy. No, why? I told her I thought I heard something during the night, and she smiled and said, "You probably dreamed it." I almost convinced myself she was right, and then it happened again 3 nights later. I woke up to the same rapid whispering underneath my bed, and this time I stayed completely still and listened. Most of it was impossible to understand, and then I heard her clearly say, "She still doesn't know." I felt sick. The whispering stopped, and she crawled out again. This time before leaving, she leaned over me. Her face was close enough that I could feel her breathing against my cheek, and then she whispered, "Soon." She left the room, and the next morning I packed a bag and started staying with friends whenever I could. A few days later, my roommate was at work, and I decided I needed to know what was going on. I went into her bedroom, and everything looked normal. And then I noticed her closet door was slightly open. Inside, she had built something on the floor. Black candles burned almost completely down. Strange symbols covered sheets of paper, and there were bundles of hair tied together with string and photographs with faces scratched out. I didn't know what any of it meant, and then I saw pictures of me sleeping. There were several. Most had been taken from underneath my bed, and on the back of one she had written, "She thinks I'm talking to myself." I dropped it, and I grabbed my purse and drove straight to my parents' house. I never slept in that apartment again. I broke my side of the lease and came back a week later with my dad to get everything I owned. My roommate's bedroom was empty, no candles or photographs, and nothing in the closet. She already had moved out too. I never saw her again. I still don't know who she was whispering to underneath my bed, and I really don't want to. Anyway, good luck sleeping tonight.
There's something about between the hours of midnight and 4 a.m. This is a time I don't like to go out because I feel like evil is the most active during these hours. My grandma used to say, nothing good happens after 12 a.m. And she called it the devil's hours. And it's true. During this period of time, you see the most accidents, the most crimes committed, and the most people being unalived. It's also this time, man, if you go out in the woods between these hours, you will see some of the most terrifying things. Now, I heard this story from this guy that I knew. He just got his first apartment. And, he would work long shifts during the day, so he would go to bed early. Well, one night, he wakes up and he's out on his balcony and he's staring at the woods. And he has no recollection as to how he got there. And so he checks his phone, which is in his pocket. It's 3:16 a.m. So he's trying to recollect his thoughts. How did I end up here on the balcony? I would have had to open the door and everything to get out here. I can't recall any of that. So he goes back to bed. And next night, same thing happens. He wakes up 3:16 a.m. He's out on his balcony looking towards the woods. Third night, right? This happens again. And when he wakes up on the balcony, his roommate's cat, who usually is confined to his roommate's bedroom, doesn't like to come out of that room, right? Comes out on the balcony and is just staring up at him and then starts staring towards the woods. So he shakes it off. He goes back to the bed. Well, he started to realize every night this would happen. And even some nights, right, he would get up and he felt almost kind of like he was in a daze, and he would go and get some water and he would go and grab something from the fridge. And the next thing he knows, he would end up on the porch on the balcony looking at the woods. And so he said finally one night he wakes up 3:16, right? And he's on the balcony and he's staring at the woods. And he says he sees this man. And this man just had this weird grin on his face. He's wearing a suit coat, suit pants, and he's just staring directly at him. And he sees the man just walk backwards into the woods. And he said that just something about that man unnerved him and made him feel off. So he actually, after that night, switched to third shift, and he would sleep during the day because he felt like whatever it was would happen, between midnight and 4 a.m.
Want to start streaming today? Tap the Go Live link below to test it now.
I need to tell you guys this ghost story. The story was sent into my email, and if you have any ghost stories, paranormal encounters, or scary stories that you want to share, you can send them to the email in my bio. The story is a little short, but I can try and make it as detailed as possible. When I was a kid, my grandma had this house, and this house was very creepy. I mean, everybody had something happen to them inside this house. No one in my family talks about it, because it was an actual nightmare for us. It was April 17th, when I was about 7, and my grandma had gotten sick. My dad wanted to take her some food to make sure that she was healthy. So my dad made her some soup and took it to her house. At the time, my dad was injured and couldn't walk very well, so I took the food in alone. Pause. The thought of having a house in your family that nobody messes with, that everybody feels the same disturbing vibe in, is terrifying. I would never want to go over to grandma's house. I'm so sorry. Okay, so now we're walking in alone with the soup, okay? Here we go. As I opened the door, I walked in the house, and there was just a vibe. As soon as you walk in, you already feel it. That gives me the creeps. I walked across the house to my grandma's room, and she wasn't in there. Where is your grandma? My grandma has a cross on top of her doorway, and I noticed that the cross was turned upside down. Okay, here's the thing. I know we know my list, right? Top of the list, creepy children, okay? Number 2 spot, creepy old people, okay? Demons? Something demonic? Right there, right, my top 3, okay? Oh my god. Okay, listen, we're getting through it together, okay? You and me, here, together. I noticed that the cross was turned upside down, so I placed the food on her bed, grabbed a chair, and turned it back around. As I was putting back the chair, I kept
hearing creaks all around the house. Okay, sorry, I know, I keep pausing. Well, this kid is in there just trying to deliver soup to his sick grandmother, and all I can picture is her crawling around the walls, crawling around the ceiling. I am so sorry to your grandmother. All I can picture her is just her crawling around this house, okay, on all fours. I just kept hearing creaks all around the house, which I mean is normal for her house. As I was walking out of the room, I looked at the cross, and it proceeded to slowly turn back around and then fell to the ground. Grandma can find her soup, okay? She'll find it. Run. Get out. After that, I ran out of that house, but as I was running, something was running after me. We need to stop. Stop it right now, because if I read the next sentence and you say that you turned around and it was Grandma, we are going to have a problem. You and I are going to have personal beef, okay? After I got out of the house and into the car, I felt a sense of relief. I did not go back to her house. Wait, so what was it? I didn't go back to her house until Christmas. And it turns out she was just at a doctor's appointment and not at the house. Around 1 year after that happened, her house got flooded. Is it a coincidence? Grandma wasn't even home. Are we actually joking? Also, so sorry that I, assumed that it was her just crawling around on all fours. What the hell? You guys, what?
Let's read a true, scary story. Welcome to the Creepy Cozy Cottage, where creepy and cozy meet. So grab a plushie and get cozy. My mom told me a story about when she was maybe 9 or so and sharing a bedroom with her brother. She recalled standing at her bedroom window on the 2nd floor, looking down at the garden at a man peeking his head around the side of the house, just above the fence. She called her brother over and asked if he could see it too. He couldn't, until it moved, and then he did. They watched it for hours until they got bored and went to bed. It came back again maybe 3 or 4 nights in a row until my uncle told my grandpa, and he stormed out of the house with his shot pew-pew and shouted for him to get lost and never come back. He didn't see anyone. My mom said she never saw the face again after that, but then again, she didn't look for it either. She told me she didn't think the face was looking up at the window, just looking into the garden, but it could have been. She just didn't get the feeling that it was, so presumed it was looking at something rather than her. She always figured someone must have been standing on a ladder because the fence was too high, but my grandpa never saw one when he went out, or signs of one being on the grass. Now, I've been with my girlfriend for 3 years, but it was about 1.5 years in that she told me she was starting to see heads peeking. No faces, just shadowy figures gazing around corners of things. They usually fade quite quickly, but sometimes they didn't. One of the times it happened when we were sitting on the bed together watching TV, and she completely blanked out, staring at the door. I thought she was looking at me at first, so I made a funny face, but she didn't notice. She was too busy staring, completely locked in on the door, unblinking. I asked her what she could see. She said there was someone staring around the corner. I asked her if it would be better if I turned the light on so she could see there was no one there. She said no. The light makes her see the faces better, and she'd rather not. I asked her if I could help in any way. Should I take out my phone and show her there wasn't anything there, or go and close the door? She said no. This one was different. I asked her why. She told me it was because it was pointing at me. They never pointed. She only ever saw the heads. That scared the absolute hell out of me, but at the same time, I thought it was kind of cool because it felt like one of those weird stories I've always read about. Against my better judgment, I got up and went to close the door. My girlfriend told me not to, but I figured it was better to close the door and not have to deal with that thing scaring her. I won't lie, my chest was ice cold at the thought of walking over to the space it was in, but it felt like I was in a horror story, so I went with it. As soon as I closed the door, she covered her face and moaned. I asked her what was wrong. She said it had stepped in the room with us. It was just standing there, and almost the height of the room, close to 7 feet. I got back in bed with her and held her until it went away, about a half hour later. She never stopped staring at it once I got in bed. She told me she was scared if she looked away, it would get closer. I asked her if that's normally what they do, and she said no, they never did more than peek. She hasn't seen one like that again, but she still sees them peeking. They don't have faces, but she sees them maybe once a month. She isn't as scared as them as she was that night, mostly because they stay behind the object they're looking out from. A seat, a wall, a door. I stay out of the way as well. I felt bad for scaring her so much the last time I interfered. My mom told me she saw something the other week when I came to visit. I went to the toilet for a while, scrolling on reels, and when I came back, she told me she'd seen someone poking their head down through the front window, trying to see up the stairs. She has reduced mobility, so she just sat and watched it until I came back down. When I checked the door cam, the last person on there was me coming in. She said she couldn't see its face, but it looked like a very tall man, because his head had peeked from the upper part of the window instead of the bottom. Once in my dream, I saw someone peeking. Every time I tried to get away, they got closer and closer, always peeking behind different objects. I forced myself to wake, as it seemed like it was about to step out. I had a horrible feeling that something would happen when it did. I hadn't seen anything in real life yet. The idea is creepy, but I'm not entirely against it.
This woman drowned on Facebook Live with thousands of people watching. In August 2022, 24-year-old Helen Wendy started a Facebook live stream while swimming alone at a motel pool in Ontario. Helen had moved from Kenya to Canada to build a better future and help send money back home to pay school fees for 2 children and her family. While on this live stream, she chatted with viewers as she relaxed in the shallow end of the pool. A few minutes into her stream, she began swimming around and moved into the deeper part of the pool. And that's when Helen suddenly began struggling to stay above the water. According to several reports from people who viewed the live stream before it was removed, she called out for help, but there was no one nearby to hear her. So viewers watching online were completely helpless. They didn't know exactly where Helen was, so they didn't know how to get her help, and all they could do was watch. Even more disturbingly, Helen's phone continued to record from the edge of the pool long after she had disappeared beneath the surface. The live stream reportedly continued for hours before another hotel guest eventually discovered her in the water and emergency crews were called. And despite life-saving efforts, Helen was pronounced dead at the scene.
Movie theaters don't exist. Now, hear me out. When is the last time you've seen a new movie theater being built? I mean, think about it, right? In every town, there are the same exact theaters that have been there for years and years. And it's like you never see these things being constructed. So are they even real? And when you think about a theater, right, on the outside, it just doesn't make sense because it's just this small square building. But when you go inside, there's just endless amounts of spaces. Okay, there's sometimes 20, 25 theaters in a megaplex. But from the outside, how do they fit all of these theaters in that building, right? And with all the exits and in all the different directions that these theaters face, like the layout just doesn't make sense to me. So the question is, how in the world do these things function? And also, when you think about it, it's kind of creepy because if just one person goes and sees a movie, right, they don't cancel that show, right? You still get to see that movie. And sometimes the theaters sit completely empty while there is a movie playing. So why are they showing movies when no one's even watching them? What is the point of that? Now, if you talk to anyone who's worked at a movie theater, they'll tell you the same thing. There are a lot of creepy things that happened. There was this man named Andre. Andre said that one night he was bored and he wanted to go see a movie. So he goes to his local theater and goes inside and he goes up to this kiosk. He said as he looked through the kiosk, he found this movie called Mystico. He said, that's strange. I've never heard of it. I haven't seen any trailers for it. Why not? Let's give it a shot. So he gets a ticket. And then he goes to the concessions and he starts talking to them. Hey, have you guys seen that movie Mystico? And none of them seem to know what he's talking about. We've not heard of that movie. We didn't even know we were playing that movie. And he's like, yeah, I haven't heard of it either. So then Andre follows his ticket and it leads him down a series of hallways all the way to this theater on the end. Now, he goes inside this theater and he said the first thing he noticed, which was really odd because he'd been to this theater many times, is all of the seating looked very old. It wasn't stadium seating. It wasn't these recliners. It was these wooden chairs. And he said, everything about this theater looked like it was from like the 1930s, 1940s. Nothing had been updated, unlike the rest of this theater. So he just went and he sat down in the middle row. We said the theater was already dark, and the projector was just playing a series of just weird, like trailers for movies he had never even heard of. And he said finally the movie came on, and he said this movie just really didn't make no sense. It was just people walking around in just an enclosed room. And he watched this for about 20 minutes when finally he said, you know what, I'm out. Like, I don't like this. He said, but that's when he realized, like, he didn't pay attention to anybody that had came in the theater or anybody that was around him. And he said, as he started to focus his eyes onto the seats all around him, he said there were all of these people. He said the theater was packed. But these people weren't sitting in their chair. He said some of them were standing. Some of them were walking back and forth through the aisles. He said, but something was off about them. They did not look human. And he said they almost seemed to be very robotic, doing the same thing over and over again. So he slowly got up and he walked around each one of these people that were just standing. He said as he started to walk down the stairs to the exit, he said he looked back and the theater was completely empty. Everyone was gone. So he hurried to the exit and he got out of there. So the next day he goes back to the theater and he's like, hey, you know, what's up with this movie Mystico? And he said, the guy behind the counter's like, I don't know what you're talking about. We don't play a movie called Mystico. He said, no, I watched it last night. I was in theater, you know, whatever. And it was playing. They said, we don't have a theater, you know, 26, 27. He said, no, I was in there last night. I have my ticket stub. And he went to go reach for the ticket stub. He didn't have it. He couldn't find it. It wasn't in his wallet anymore. But he told him, you know, I could show you. Let me show you. So he said the employee went with him into the theater and he showed him where, you know, he had gone in, except there wasn't a theater there. It was just an exit. And they told him, sir, are you all right? Like, is everything okay? You know, maybe you should go home. And so he said he left, but he never could figure out what that movie was, how he seen it, and how he could have watched this movie that just didn't exist.
Here's a story no one asked me to tell, but I'm going to tell it anyway. There was a woman who woke up to the sound of her phone ringing. There was an attorney on the line, and he told her, I have some news for you. Your father has passed away, and he's left you the family home. She hadn't talked to her father in 23 years. As a matter of fact, the last time she remembered seeing or feeling her father was when she was 3 years old, and he kissed her on the cheek right before he left out the front door to go to work. A few minutes after that, her mother came in with suitcases and told her to load up her toys and everything else, and they're leaving. And she packed up with her mom, and they left. 2 days later, they went to a different state. Over the years, her mother told her that her father had been abusive to her and to the little girl, even though the little girl doesn't even remember him so much as raising his voice. But over the years, her mom kept telling her the same story. Her father went to court over and over to try to be able to see her, but her mom was convincing, and in the meantime, married her stepfather. All those years went on, she got married, and now she had her own little baby, but her mother always said to her, don't ever go see your father, he's really abusive, and she believed her. So here she was, being left with the family home, the home that she had left 23 years before. And although she was so grateful, she just couldn't believe it because he hadn't seen her in so long. Her and her husband and her little baby moved in. And within a week, they started hearing things in the house. It was scaring them. In the middle of the night, pots clamoring, and they'd run into the kitchen and nothing was there. Lights going on and off and on and off. Strange smells which, as she can remember, smelled like her father's cologne. So she didn't know what else to do, and she thought, I'm going to go to my mom and ask, is this really the reason you left? So she went to her mom, and when she went to her mom's house, her aunt was also there, the mom's sister. And she said to her mom, I'm hearing all of this. Is this why we really left? Were you scared? Because I don't even remember Dad yelling, so I'm so confused. Finally, her aunt spoke up and said, you know what? You need to tell her the truth. So her mom told her, finally, the truth, that her father really was a good man, but she was in love with someone else. And she decided she just wanted to cut everything off and start a new life with her stepfather. Of course, the girl was furious because She remembered her dad as this loving person, and she was told all these years that he wasn't. She went home and thought to herself as she sat in her father's old chair, "Dad, this must be you. You wanted to get my attention. You wanted me to go and ask Mom so that I would know you were a good person." So her and her husband walked around each and every room and said, "Dad, you've done nothing wrong and you are free to go. I'll have to love you as you're in heaven." That night she went to bed and she slept really well. There were no noises, there were no sounds. But right before she woke up, she felt a little kiss so strong and heard footsteps walking away that she actually thought her husband had gotten out of bed and given her a little kiss before he went downstairs. She woke up and realized her husband was still next to her snoring. So she knew there was only one person who would have done this on his way out, which was her father. And so now in that house, she'll say, "Dad, what about this electrical?" And then miraculously, somebody will come into her life that day and help her with the electrical. So they're having a relationship now, finally, after all this time. It's just a little bit different. But she knows the truth, and her dad gave her the truth and was on his way. Y'all have a beautiful day, and remember, they're going to get their point across one way or another to let you know who they really were when they were here on earth.
This guy, his wife, and his kids were all sound asleep in their house. Someone sits at the end of his bed, but there's no one there. Welcome back to another episode of Creepy Corner with Ken. Let's go ahead and get into today's story because this is absolutely wild and creepy and we need to talk about it. So this guy writes that he wasn't home alone. He was with his wife and his 2 kids. They all had just went to bed, except for him. He was laying there wide awake, just was having trouble falling asleep. He said that he heard footsteps in the hallway and smiled because he figured it was one of his sons coming into their room. He said all of a sudden he heard nails kind of scratching at the door, and then right after was some knocking. So he says he smiles again and is like, "Why are you knocking? Just come in and lay in between us." He says that he regrets ever saying that after what happens next. He said after this, he heard the door slightly open with some light footsteps approaching. Except it wasn't his son and it wasn't climbing into bed. It just sat down on the bed. Whoever this person was that was sitting on his bed, he noted was heavy and extremely heavy to the point where he could hear the wood in his bed frame cracking. And at the same time during all of this, he could feel his legs just bending downward. And that's when I would have woken my wife up and we would have booked it out of there with our kids. And also, if he's laying awake, could he not see that there was no one there or that his kid never walked in? I don't know. He said that his legs finally stopped moving downward, but that his legs were downward about a 30-degree angle. He notes that he himself was a big guy, but whatever this was even bigger than him. He said in that moment, he just felt very paralyzed, and still to this day, he's embarrassed about that, but he was completely frozen because he's thinking the only other adult in this house is my wife, and even so, she's nowhere near as heavy as me, so what is at the end of my bed? He said after a few moments, he finally worked up the courage again, and when he looked around, even though his room was dark, he couldn't see anyone there, but his legs were starting to hurt from this heavy weight that was on him. But he says eventually he decided he was over it, and he just swung himself up and ran straight to his kids' room to make sure that they were okay. But yet, he still hasn't woken up his wife. Which is weird because the second that I felt something heavy sit on my legs at the end of our bed, I would have been over there like, yeah, wake up, go sit at the end of our bed. I don't know, something. But when he gets to his kids' rooms, he can see that both of them are still sleeping. So that's when he says he's worried about his wife and begins running back to the bedroom. Common sense would have been for her to have woken up with you and ran with you. I get it, there was a lot going on, but still. However, when he gets back to their room, he sees that his wife is still sleeping and that the indention in the bed is no longer there. He said that he began checking each individual room one by one to see if anyone was there, anything was out of place, but nothing was. He even checks the front and back door and both doors were still locked. After this, he just went back to bed, went to sleep, and nothing ever happened again. All I know is I wouldn't have been sleeping at all. No. In fact, I'm packing up the house and we're moving because I'm not staying here. Also imagine his wife when she wakes up in the morning and he tells her this story. Probably sounded crazy. And since he didn't wake her up, she's not gonna believe him. Said that he was so scared and terrified, but also embarrassed that he ended up telling no one in his life because he knew that they weren't going to believe him. He wrote this anonymously because he doesn't want people to judge him or think he's lying.
I believe him, and that's terrifying. And if you haven't already, you need to move. I hope you guys enjoyed another episode of Creepy Corner with Ken. Like always, if you guys have any stories that you want me to share on here, you can always send it to the email that's in my bio, and I'll share it on here. I'll make smart choices. And if you see something at the end of your bed, maybe wake up your significant other as well.
I'm back. I'm back, and I have a story as a little reward. To cover a couple things, no, I haven't added water to my haunted table. I completely forgot it was haunted during summer. I just let the ghost do whatever the ghost wanted to do. I'm the worst person to haunt now as I'm all grown up because I've seen everything, I've been through everything, and I'm pretty sure the ghost is just standing in the corner like, this is a boring bitch. But no, I'm also confused about the water situation, you guys. Do I add a bowl? Do I put it in like a little vial? Where am I putting water on my table? Tell me, I don't know. So anyway, back to story time. And I have been sitting on this story all fucking summer. I had a few dreams about it. I couldn't escape it and I couldn't talk about it. But now that school's starting again, back in my car, back in the parking lot, we can discuss a little something. So, when I was in Japan, in that haunted house, just to recap, remember, I lived in a haunted home in Japan. Set the scene. I'm not sure if you guys have noticed, but my top tooth, right here, this one, there's a little line that goes right across. There's a line because my tooth chipped in half. And then in my lips, hang on. Right here, that teeny tiny little white line used to be a fat fucking scar. And I'm gonna talk about how that happened. So, I haven't told a story in so long, I feel very fucking uncomfortable. So stick with me, here we go. Downstairs in the basement, remember my parents had this ghost mist that really enjoyed blocking doorways, blocking windows, and just kind of coming up out of the ground. That was my least favorite part about it, was it coming up out of the ground, because it would catch you off guard. You would never expect it. This time was a little bit different. After my shower, because remember, I only shower in the basement when my mom is in the basement as well. Folding laundry, cleaning, whatever she's doing, however long she's doing that for, that's how long my shower is, because I will not shower in the basement of this Japanese home by myself. I hate talking about this one. It's like, I still have memories of it, you know what I mean? So when I'm done with my shower, I have my towel. I'm all wrapped up. My clothes are upstairs in my bedroom. I didn't think this through. I didn't bring my clean clothes downstairs. So I have my towel and I have my dirty clothes to put in my dirty hamper in my hand. I'm done with the shower and I'm walking up the steps. As I'm walking up the steps, about halfway to the top of the steps, I hear a rattle. I don't feel a rattle, but I hear it. Like I hear like a weird, like a rattling sound. And I stop what I'm doing. And I look down towards where the bottom of the step is to see if it's my mom doing something. And when I look back to keep walking up the stairs, the mist shoots up out of the middle of the stairs. And it's big. And it's in my fucking face, and it scares me, and I grab the handrail. But as I grab the handrail, my grip isn't secure. And I felt this force push into my chest. And I fell down the fucking stairs. Dirty clothes go up. My towel fucking rips off. I'm butt-ass naked. I'm falling down the stairs. I smack my face on the lip of the stairs, and my tooth breaks off. But the way it breaks off is it goes like in my lip and breaks off. So I still have that tiny little scar Now this tooth, you can kind of see it. There's like this little, oh goodness gracious, there's like this little thing right across. Can you see it? Right there, right there, right there, right there. My tooth fucking breaks off and flies off. And I make such a loud fucking racket falling down the fucking stairs that my mom comes hauling around the corner a million miles an hour and goes, "Oh my God, what the fuck is happening? Are you okay? Did you fall down the stairs? Are you okay? Did you hit your head?" She's bombarding me with questions, and I'm in a state of like shock, adrenaline. Like, I didn't know my lip is busted and bleeding, and I didn't know my fucking tooth is gone. Left my face, okay? And when she goes to sit me up, because I didn't make it all the way down the stairs, there were like a couple of stairs left. So I remember she's helping sit me up. I'm putting my hand on the stairs to sit up, and she's looking at me, and she's like, "Holy shit, what happened?" And she can see the blood coming down, and she's like, "Your fucking tooth." And I went to go touch it, and it hurt. It really fucking hurt, you guys. I went to touch my tooth, and it was missing. And in that moment, I freaked the fuck out. I was like, my tooth, fuck the shadow, fuck the mist, where's my tooth? And I'm freaking out, and I'm having a panic attack because that was an awful experience. She's looking around on the stairs, and she finds this tiny little piece of tooth. And I go, "Oh my God, it's my fucking tooth, my fucking tooth." She's like, "It's okay, it's okay." So she gets me up, she puts a towel on me, she helps walk me up the stairs, she goes to the kitchen, she gets a cup of milk, she puts my tooth in the milk to keep it alive. I didn't know that until she did it. So she has like a cup of milk. Now, this is a situation where you have to move really fucking quick. So she calls the base dentist, and she goes, "We have an emergency. My mom's having surgery right now." She's like, "We have an emergency. My daughter's tooth is chipped. Like, we need an appointment right now. Like, help, help, help." And so she gets us an appointment in like the next hour. So she helps me upstairs. I get dressed. I clean up my face a little bit. We get my sister. We grab her. We throw her in the car. Where's my stepdad? He's at work. You know, fuck that guy. He's busy. She puts me in the car, and she has this little cup of milk on my lap. And she goes, "Your tooth is in there. Don't spill it. We got to take it to the dentist." And I'm looking at her like, right? And my lip keeps bleeding no matter how many times I pat it. It's fucking gushing blood. And I have this little milk, and I remember looking up at the house, like, just in shock that physically it fucking actually hurt me. It's different, like, when it's psychological, that's one thing, but when something pushes you down the fucking stair in my chest, like, I'll never forget the way that felt with the pressure on my chest. Oops. That's still my mom. She's all right. So long story short, to wrap it up, it's kind of a long story. We get to the dentist. They're able to cement my tooth back on. They tell my mom that was a good idea, putting it in milk. But then again, she used to be she went to dental school before I was born. Like, she knows. He cements it back on. We don't need to go to the doctor or the ER for my lip. It stopped bleeding. It was just really fucking swollen and bruised and like really ugly. We get back home, and I get back in my room, and I sit down on my bed, and I could feel this feeling when I'm sitting back in my room with my tooth all fucking fixed. I can't eat anything because the cement, like all the bonding stuff, needs to dry. So I'm just sitting there on my bed, like, what the fuck just happened to me? And I could feel this like I was being watched. Like something was watching me, this very uneasy feeling. I couldn't shake it. I remember carefully walking back down the stairs and spending the rest of the evening in the living room around family because I was not comfortable being by myself for the rest of the night. Yeah, so my tooth is still fucked up. Right here. And I still have a scar right here from being pushed down the stairs.
Everything about him was identical, right down to the chipped tooth. Hi everyone, welcome back to Candlelit Whispers with Amanda. Today we have an interesting Reddit story about a potential doppelganger. I still can't explain what happened.
Last week, I stopped at the vape shop before work, and I watched my ex pull into the parking lot. The problem is, he lives over 600 miles away. Actually, I moved to get away from him. We haven't spoken in more than a year, and I kept telling myself it couldn't be him until he got out of the car. Same height, same face, same smile, same chipped tooth, same backwards baseball hat. Even the way he stood and the way he moved was identical. I was shaking so badly that I couldn't stop staring. When he noticed, I apologized and told him that he looked like somebody that I knew. He told me his name and told me that he lives less than a mile away from me. The only difference, my ex has tattoos and he didn't. I've played that moment in my head 100 times, and I'm still not convinced that it wasn't him. Was it a doppelganger, or did I just experience a glitch in the Matrix? Wow, I feel like this was definitely a doppelganger because it takes a little bit longer to do the whole tattoo removal process. So even if he had his tattoos removed, I still think you would be able to see like a little hint of the tattoos. I think it was a doppelganger. You know, they say that we always have someone around the world who looks like us. But you let me know what you think about this story in the comments below.
Bro, what's going on around?
Want to play something scary? Have you ever played the game Cat Scratch before? Wait. Messed up my own intro. Have you ever played the game Cat Scratch before? No? Me neither. Want to play it? Are you single? Can't find someone to love you? Well, if you're lonely and you still want scratches down your back, what am I doing? Oh my god. Oh my god. The only thing this game requires is 2 people. So this is one of the more accessible games to play. One person sits with their legs crossed, and the other person lays their head in their lap. There can be bystanders, but they need to sit in a circle around the 2 main players, and they can't speak. Also, close the blinds, make the room dim. The storyteller, or the one sitting with their legs crossed, begins to recite this story. There once was an old lady who owned a cat. That cat was very nice. It meowed and purred. One day, the cat got hit by a car and died. Cat scratch, cat scratch, cat scratch. The old lady got a new cat. The cat was very mean. It clawed and hissed. Cat scratch, cat scratch, cat scratch. One day, the cat got hit by a car and died. The old lady decided not to get any more cats. Cat scratch, cat scratch, cat scratch. There is a second story you can read, but I don't feel like reading that here. So if you want that, just look it up. The storyteller also needs to rub the person in their... Focus! Oh my god, hello? Okay. The person reciting the story also needs to rub the temples of the person laying in their lap, not sitting. Don't sit in their lap. After reading the story, the listener should now sit up and have their back checked. If you did this correctly, there will be scratches. Contrary to what I said at the beginning, I actually have played this game many times, and every time I've played it, it has worked. And I'm not just saying that, it actually has worked. I don't know how it works, but it does. So although I was brave enough to play this game, who knows, maybe you are too. Good luck.